around it. He's going to own up to it. He's going to handle it. And this locker room is going to have to come together because this is going to be a soap opera on the outside, much like the media has portrayed us to be from the whole season. So we have to be a disciplined team. We have to address it. We have to handle it. We have to come together. And instead of feeling like we just won a game that we really needed, we talk about a singular focus and mindset. It feels like we lost. And so it's going to take time for us to realize that we just won this game, even though it's very obvious with the scoreboard. But that's the tough part.
Welcome back to First Take. We are coming to you live from above the Heineken River Deck at Pier 17. We just heard from Myles Garrett and Baker Mayfield on last night's brawl following the Browns' win over the Steelers. We now welcome in NFL analyst Damien Woody. What's up, Damien?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
What's up, big boy?
What's going on?
Good job on SportsCenter last night.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Stephen A., I'll start with you. Will this fight follow Myles Garrett for his entire career?
It could, but I don't think so. I think because as egregious as it was, and it was egregious, and I think it warrants a season-ending suspension. I think that, it's one of those things where he can recover from it if he comes back and make sure there's no duplicate performance. There's no duplicate action. If he comes out and he just plays lights out football and he conducts himself like a model citizen on the football field, I think this is something that he can move past because it was on the football field in the heat of action. Again, the action was inexcusable in my estimation. He deserves to be suspended, no question about that. But this is not a guy that's getting in trouble off the field. This is not a guy that's been arrested or anything or found himself in trouble with the law. This is not a guy that has that kind of, he's not a repeat violator to this level, to the point where we see a laundry list of incidences involving him that provoked league sanctions against him. This is not the case. And as long as that remains to be so, that this is an isolated incident, I do think that eventually he could recover from it. We'll see highlights if somebody else does something stupid. We'll always see those highlights of him. We'll never forget it. It'll never leave our mind's eye. But to say that it's something that will stain him to the point where his character, his reputation, wherever he goes, however long he stays in Cleveland, it's going to sully him for the rest of his career, I think he has an opportunity to come to get over that and to go beyond that.
People are going to remember it because they can't recall seeing something like this before. So in that sense, it'll follow him. I think part of this will be how these two players, Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph, behave for the rest of their career. If Mason Rudolph winds up in another melee, like something like this, that he once again instigated, escalated, and continued, then it will not look as bad for Myles Garrett. If instead Myles Garrett winds up in another incident or two where it's like, whoa, that looked extracurricular, and Mason Rudolph doesn't get into it again, we'll look back at this differently. But that's the point that I emphasize. Two players. Like, you see Pouncey throwing shots, right? No one blames him. Oh, he saw his dude assaulted Damien Woody, as I heard you say, with a helmet, so he just sees red and he's just punching. Well, Myles Garrett saw red too. But one guy started a fight, escalated the fight by trying hard to take off the other guy's helmet. Instead, he got his helmet taken off. And then when it was over, continued the fight. So you start it, you escalate it, you continue it, but the other guy ends it, and now we're all mad at the other guy? It doesn't work that way. Not to excuse hitting someone with a helmet. That should be dealt with. There should be a suspension, more than is just in the rule book, which is, by the way, it's in the rule book, Article 17, 15 yards and automatic ejection, disqualification.
For taking a helmet off.
For swinging a helmet. That is in the rule book. There's a penalty prescribed for that already. 15 yards, disqualification. If you want to add to that, I get it. Commissioner's discretion, it's a bad look. We're talking about head trauma. Can't use it as a weapon. What if you cracked his head open? Although that's probably unlikely, but okay. 2 games, 4 games. Someone wants to argue on the outside, 6 games. Okay, I think it's excessive. Also have to look at Mason Rudolph. Trying to take the helmet off, escalating it, continuing it when it was over. I'm sorry if I don't see him as the victim in this.
I think he'll have an opportunity to get past this. As egregious as this whole his actions were last night, we just haven't seen anything like this on in the national stage on the field like that. We've heard from many players talk about anytime a helmet comes off. That's when guys usually pump the brakes because they understand the ramification that, if that happened with other players, you never know what could happen physically to that player. I think if Myles Garrett, I don't know Myles Garrett personally, but from everything that I've heard from other people, he's a good dude, deep dude. His character isn't what's really displayed that was on the field last night. I think if he fulfills his promise as a player throughout the rest of his career, I think that would be the opportunity for him to move forward. We won't forget this because it was so egregious and it was on a national platform. But I think if he can fulfill that promise of being the #1 pick and continue to be that devastating player on the defensive side of football and lead the Cleveland Browns to be a perennial winner, then I think at the end of the day, most people will let it slide.
Yeah, again, when you talk about like what is expected when the helmets come off, restraint, who didn't show restraint? It was Mason Rudolph's helmet that was off. It was Mason Rudolph who brought helmets into it in the first place, and it was Mason Rudolph who pursued the fight with his helmet off.
Wait a minute, Max.
It's now
hold
Myles
on,
Garrett
Max.
to show restraint
Max,
after that.
hold on 1 second, Max. Okay, because I've been hearing this whole argument from you this whole morning, and I'm going to set the record straight on this. When you're talking about taking off a helmet, that's when everything stops. The fact that Myles Garrett stripped the man of his helmet and then used the helmet as a weapon, Max, do you understand what could have happened in this particular situation? Because what I'm hearing from you is like a bunch of whataboutism. What about Mason Rudolph? Max, we're talking about a guy who could have been seriously injured or potentially killed in this particular situation with a weapon. Why are you, wait a minute, hold on.
Because the odds that he was going to get killed by that are extremely remote.
Why are you rolling your eyes at me saying this? We're talking about a 6'5", 270-pound man, okay, whose adrenaline's at an all-time high, and if he used the crown of the helmet, who knows what could have happened? I don't understand. Why would you roll your eyes at that with me saying that?
Because it was Mason Rudolph who tried to take off the helmets. Myles Garrett wasn't thinking about taking off anyone's helmet. Mason Rudolph, it's not like he just took a pass at it. He grabbed it, got his hand underneath, twisted, tried to take it off. Myles Garrett's like, oh, we're bringing okay, fine. It's a helmet thing now. Took Mason Rudolph's helmet off. At that point, it's over. The linemen were on Myles Garrett, pushing him back. Mason Rudolph chased him.
Okay,
now,
but you know what?
I agree. I agree. You shouldn't swing the helmet.
It's one thing if he takes off the helmet. Okay, I get that. But then you go the whole next step forward and use the helmet to hit dude upside the head?
Damian,
come on, Max.
I agree
I don't
you can't do that.
And about this.
I agree he can't do that, and he should be suspended for it. Period. And if you look at what happened, it's not like he took, there's a guy without a helmet. I'm going to go smash him with his own helmet. No, it's that he had the helmet in his hand. He's being pushed back, and he swung almost like to get extension on a punch. I agree it's bad judgment. In the moment, impulse control, whatever it is, it can't happen. There needs to be a suspension. But to make it sound like he went and he went and hunted this guy down and tried to hit him in the head with a helmet, that's not what happened. Mason Rudolph brought the helmets into it. Mason Rudolph pursued him when he was being restrained by Mason Rudolph's teammates, and now Mason Rudolph is the victim.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, Max. The fact you're saying that Mason Rudolph pursued him, okay? He pursued him without a helmet on.
Yeah, he
did.
Okay,
so what type of threat?
Smart.
What type of threat is Mason Rudolph without a helmet? The fact that Myles Garrett has his helmet in his hand, what type of threat is Mason Garrett to Myles Garrett in that particular situation? Please tell me.
I see. When you're mad because a guy started a fight with you, tried to take your helmet off, and his teammates are on you, you have to calculate all that.
It seems like you're trying to give Mason Rudolph an out in this whole
Mason Rudolph or Myles Garrett?
You're trying to give Myles Garrett, excuse me. You're trying to give Myles Garrett an out in this whole situation by saying that Mason Rudolph pursued him, so he had to retaliate.
Well, let me.
No, wait, excuse me, real quick, Stephen A.
Sure.
Myles Garrett can do like this with a helmet all he wants. If Mason Rudolph isn't chasing him, it's not going to hit anything. It's not like Myles Garrett's like, now I'm going to go hit this dude with his helmet. He was being pushed back and restrained. Right. The other guy was attacking. What are people talking about?
I'll let y'all speak. Let me chime in here because I knew that you needed to go at him because I saw what Damian's position was from last night.
Sure.
I started off the show by saying, Max, that your position was asinine, and I'm going to repeat that. Here's why. We're not ignoring what you're saying about Mason Rudolph. I just saw that Charles Woodson tweeted, you know, are we going to look at this from both sides? To my man Charles Woodson. Yes, we are going to look at both sides. Of course, no one is ignoring what Mason Rudolph did. And the league obviously will exact actions against him as well. But what we can't ignore is the reality of what Damian Woody is pointing to. Not only are you the bigger, stronger guy, but you have on your equipment, Max. You have on your helmet. And there are 2 offensive linemen for the Pittsburgh Steelers in front of you. So even though Mason Rudolph is coming at you, he's coming at you without a helmet on. And the presumption of him being a pivotal threat in all of this is minuscule, or rather, the thought of him being a real threat in all of this is minuscule. So if you know that, and you're supposed to know that if you're Myles Garrett, have a helmet on rather, and to swing Mason Rudolph's helmet. First of all, you yanked it off his head. Then after that, you swung it and connected with his head, with his own helmet while you still had your helmet on. The person who was really, really threatened in all of this is Mason Rudolph. Even though he was stupid, Max, like you said, for coming at Myles Garrett, the chances of Myles Garrett being hurt in that situation was slim to none compared to Mason Rudolph, because Mason Rudolph didn't have on the equipment and Myles Garrett swung and hit him with it.
I'll respond to that quickly. Let me just say to you, and then I want to respond to Damian. If I start a fight with a guy who's bigger than me, and then I bring baseball bats into it, and then I get mine taken away, and he still has his, and I charge at him, and I get hit with a baseball bat. Well, guess what?
Hold on. What do you mean bring baseball bat? Hold on. Use your analogy. Where was the baseball bat that Mason Rudolph brought into the equation?
Mason Rudolph tried to take Myles Garrett's helmet off. The only reason,
but he did it.
He failed because Myles Garrett's stronger than him, so he took his helmet off. That's why it was in his hand.
But what I'm asking you is, because he failed, Max, Myles Garrett knows he failed because you still have your helmet on, which means that he was all right.
So to Damian, I will say, and this responds to that also, Damian, it's not just the threat, whether or not he felt threatened. At that point, you're in a fight. So you have to see what's going on. Myles Garrett the fight was started by Mason Rudolph. The fight was escalated and helmets were brought into it by Mason Rudolph. The fight was pursued, continued by Mason Rudolph. It's not simply that Myles Garrett at that point has to think, what is the threat? He's mad too. What we're really responding to is the disproportional response, in your opinion, and I agree, with Myles Garrett's reaction. That's what we're punishing here, the disproportion, not the actual engagement in the fight.
Max, the man, Myles Garrett, is literally being restrained by Pittsburgh Steelers offensive lineman with the quarterback's helmet in his head. What threat is Mason Rudolph right there?
Again, you're going to threat.
He's not a threat, Max.
You're not going to, but it's not about threat.
The fact that you feel like it's almost like you think it's okay.
Damian, it's not about threat. It's not about threat. They're mad at each other. They want to fight. Mason Rudolph's pursuing the fight. So Garrett wants to fight too at that point. But here's the difference.
You're going to use a weapon? You're going to use a weapon in this particular situation?
That's punishable. The question is, what should the punishment be? The point is, everything Garrett did was in response to. The helmet was in response to Mason Rudolph. The swinging at Mason Rudolph was in response to the fact that Mason Rudolph was attacking. So the response was disproportional. But we can't blame him for a response. We can punish the disproportionality of the response. And the question is, what should that punishment be?
Well, the disproportionality of the response is the fact, Max, that because he took the helmet and he hit him with the helmet, that in and of itself warrants a 6-game suspension.
You say 6. I could go with 6. I think that's on the outside.
Mac, you want me to tell you what the perfect situation would have been for Myles Garrett when that whole thing escalated? All Myles Garrett had to do, Mason Rudolph or Myles Garrett had to do, look at the scoreboard.
No doubt.
Right.
Look at the scoreboard.
Of course you're right. Of course that's true.
You want to come at me? Look at the scoreboard.
You're right.
That's all I need.